So as you know, there are a lot of interventions out there, and we are committed with Captain to really embracing evidence-based practices. So I did a little Google autism treatment and came up with 45,600,000. And so that's a whole lot of stuff out there that you guys have to contend with, other than the 27 evidence-based practices from the NPDC and the 14 established treatments. So here's our little education update. Just as you all know, what are evidence-based practices is a PowerPoint we prepare for you, and it's already on the Captain website so that when you go out and do your requirement of providing training. So as you listen to this, you can kind of listen to some social scripts that I'm going to give you. So I talk about there are 97,156 students where all of you out there, most of you have checked the box, autism. But is that really all of our children with autism? No, some of them don't have IEPs. And so we have some students out there who are not receiving special ed services, but these are ones that are. What I wanted to make sure you know is you can go into this website at your own leisure and pull up data for your own district, your own county, your own SELPA, and get all your own numbers so that, as Patty mentioned earlier this morning, when you go back as your requirement to talk to your SELPA director, you have the data too and go, wow, look at this. We have this many students with autism at this grade, et cetera, et cetera. And you can do it by grade, you can do it by disability, you can do it by race, you can do it by all kinds of things. And so it's good data for you to have. We like data in Captain, as you know. This is just a bar graph that you can use to show the prevalence is increasing. So again, as Patty said this morning, your services will always be needed no matter what policy changes happen, et cetera. So what's new from the NPDC? We were so honored to have Sam come. I don't think I really said it out loud, but you know, he did not charge us a speaker's fee. He was thrilled. He was honored. He said, oh my, I will just come. So we paid really for his travel and a couple of Panera box lunches and some dinner and gave him a nice bottle of wine. So, you know, that's how much he respects and admires the work that you all have done. And I personally was thrilled to hear him say that we're the superstars of all those state cohorts. The AFIRM modules is also what they're working on, and you guys are familiar with those. Those are the autism-focused intervention resources and modules. They're free. This is the newest one, and it's how do you select, wait, I'm going to show you the 15 out of the 27, but this is the brand new one. And this is the one that says, how do you choose an evidence-based practice? Because I know some of you, it's like, where do I start? And this gives you a really nice strategic way to start. So I have used it with teams of folks that I'm coaching. You open it up because they go, where do you start? There's 27. And I think we even had a question from Lisa this morning about where do you start? Which ones are critical? How do you choose these? So this is a really nice new learning module that was just put up. You know that, how many of you work with the little ones? Right? So you know you have your own little world here. It's still the same evidence-based practices. They've just put them all in their own little world on this particular area. And then, as he mentioned, the CISA website, where there is all kinds of information for those of you who are working with older individuals with an autism spectrum disorder. And this has learning modules, it has data for you, it has guidance documents. And so those of you who are just working with the older ones, it's kind of like, you know, just with a little few boundaries in there. We encourage all of you to subscribe to this listserv, and just so you know, your email's not going to be bombarded, but we all subscribe. It comes to you regularly, and it says, what's going on in the world of autism? Because gone are the days where you are the last to know what's important in the field of autism. So it helps really keep you up to date. It also will let you know when there's a new AFIRM module, because as I said, there's only 15 out of the 27 posted. So you'll get an email right away and that says, hey, we just put the 16th one up. He talked a little bit this morning about the new goal attainment scaling form. We were using this one because that's what we used in our grant project. But this one makes a little more sense, we feel, and we were thrilled that they changed it. It's on your Captain website. But you can see it really pretty much aligns with how you all are doing IEPs or the plans for the young ones. So you have your present level of performance, which is a 0. Then you have your initial objective, right? That's a 1. But here's your second one. And then what's your expected level? And then what would be just a little bit more than that? Which would be more that exceeds expected outcomes? So it follows more of a linear progression. I raise your hand if you were a little confused by the old one. I know, I was going more or less. Thank you, Sharon. So this one makes more sense to us. So it is posted on our captain website. And he talked again about making sure we have data to show that we have outcomes. And so this would be a really nice document for you to take when you talk to your administrator as well. They have done a nice job on the CISA website. So these are exemplars. So you can go in and look at real goals that were written and what is 0, a 1, and it exceeds as well. So this has all kinds of the use of goal attainment scaling. And again, you can go straight to the CISA website from the captain website. You just click on it and it'll take you there. But this gives you lots of really good examples so that you're not kind of creating something from nothing. So it's a nice document to help you. So all these things, the matrix that Dr. Odom was talking about, the overlap, you know, I remember we kept saying, when are you going to do the overlap one? So he finally did the overlap one because we asked him to. No, I'm just kidding. So the new NPDC matrix is on the captain website. This is new, and it's on the captain website. It's an introductory letter. So basically what this letter is for all of you to use as an introduction to yourself that you know about autism spectrum disorders, you know about evidence-based practices, and that you're more than happy to go to a higher learning, wherever it's a college, a junior college, a state college, a private university, wherever they're training individuals to go into the field of special education to make sure that they understand what the evidence-based practices are. And we can envision, you know, you can make up your own or you could just take the what are EBPs and present that. But it's a letter of introduction saying, here's who I am, here's the organization I'm affiliated with, and I'd be more than happy to come present to your class, your faculty, or whomever. So we wanted to provide that with you so that you don't have to make those cold calls that are too cold to make the call. So now I would like to introduce Emily Woolford, and she's going to talk about our state level updates with the Department of Developmental Services. So I'm going to let you take the stage now, and you can click right here. Perfect. For your next slide.
So as Ann mentioned, my name is Emily Woolford. I'm with the Department of Developmental Services. And for those of you who may not know, the Department of Developmental Services is the state agency that contracts with our 21 regional centers throughout the state who provide service coordination for individuals with autism and other developmental and intellectual disabilities. I'm going to be providing you with a caseload update for those being provided with services through our regional centers of all ages. And then I'm also going to take a minute to talk about our new Take a Minute campaign, which is focused specifically for infants and toddlers in our Early Start program. So we'll start with the caseload update. As you can see from this slide, from 2005 until 2015, the number of individuals on the regional center caseloads more than doubled. This slide basically gives you the percentages. In January of 2005, 16% of the consumers being served at the regional centers had a diagnosis of autism. In January of 2015, 30% of our overall caseload was of consumers with autism. This graph shows you a little bit about autism and co-occurring developmental disabilities. So 68% of the individuals that we serve with autism have a diagnosis, 68.8% have a diagnosis only of autism, whereas 26.2% also have a co-occurring intellectual disability. 4% have a diagnosis of epilepsy as well. 1.3 also have a diagnosis of CP, and then 3.9 also have another diagnosis. And it's possible that people have more than one of these diagnoses. This slide shows the age range of individuals that our regional centers serve. You'll see that half of the individuals that we serve, almost, are between the ages of 3 and 11 years old, and another 33% are between the ages of 12 and 21. So these are the individuals that you're all serving. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about our state systemic improvement plan. So for our kiddos in early start who are between the ages of 0 and 3, we receive federal funding through the Office of Special Education Programs, and there's a new focus on child outcomes, not just how we're serving kids who are between the ages of 0 and 3, but also, are they getting better? Are they showing more progress as a result? And so all the states who are part of Part C are now required to do what's called a state systemic improvement plan. And this is a multi-year plan that where we must provide objectives and goals to make sure that we can meet our goals. And so we had a group of stakeholders that got together, a very diverse group of stakeholders, and we looked at data, and we decided that we were going to focus on improving the rate of growth in social and emotional outcomes for kids in early start. And the reason why we chose this outcome area of social and emotional development is because we know that social and emotional development is really the foundation for all other learning. And in addition to that, California was actually, compared to other states, doing not a very great job in terms of rates of social and emotional development. We're below the national average. And so because of these things, we decided to focus on social and emotional development. All the regional centers are already required to assess for social and emotional development and assist with skill building in that area. But there weren't really a lot of resources out there specific to our population. And so we decided, we acknowledge that we don't all have a lot of time, providers and parents, especially of those with young children with a developmental disability. And so we decided that we really needed to come up with some tangible resources that parents and regional centers and providers can use. And that's kind of how the Take a Minute was born, this whole concept of if you just take a minute, you can really impact children. So we provided a best practice provider checklist for providers. We've also developed a parent flyer. It's just a two-sided flyer. It's currently available in English and Spanish, but we're also going to be translating it into multiple other languages. We also have a 7-minute video that's available, and it's for parents and providers. And we also have that in Spanish right now and English. And then we also have an open access course, and this is provided through our contractor Wested that we work with, and they do also have a 10-week course that's a facilitated course where there's homework and assignments and whatnot. But what we kept hearing from the field is that they really needed something that was more abbreviated so that providers and vendors who didn't have a lot of time could take the course. So now it takes about 4 hours to complete, and it's open and it's free and available to you and to everyone else. This is our website. Our Early Start neighborhood is where all these resources are housed, and I really encourage you to check them out. And we also have an online community of practice so that different groups of individuals can discuss topics related to early start and related to social and emotional development. And it's a great resource. Up here near the top, there's an SIP Central page. And if you click on that and you go to resources, all of our resources are right here in English and in Spanish. So the flyer I'm particularly proud of because I helped work on it with some parents and some of the regional center staff. And it went through multiple revisions, but we're really proud of it now. And there's also our Interagency Coordinating Council on Early Intervention. They've come out with some general guidelines around screening and assessment in social and emotional development. And it really does focus a lot on the importance of interpretation of assessments and the importance of working with parents really collaboratively to get the best information. So I encourage you all to check it out. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. What I'm going to talk to you about today are some very significant changes that will be coming through the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, CMS, and the new regulations and rules for home and community-based services. It's very comprehensive, and it's really going to have an effect on all of us. Everyone who works with transition-age youth and adults will be affected by these new rules. They offer many challenges, but also many opportunities for individuals, opportunities that they didn't have in the past. So the rules actually increase the opportunities for integration, where a person lives, how a person lives, where they play, what kinds of activities they engage in. A lot of opportunities are increased also for integrated employment. And so the expectation is that there will be equal opportunity for people with disabilities to live and work in communities, to receive adequate wages for their work, and not to be discriminated against on the basis of their disability. It also optimizes independence through expanded self-advocacy. Thank you. So it was issued in January of 2014, and each state is creating their own transition plans, and the programs are funded to provide the service full access and benefits of community living. It ensures their rights to privacy, dignity, respect, freedom from coercion and restraint. And as many of you know, many of the people who are the people that we serve in the regional center system and that you teach don't necessarily have those rights as the rest of us do. And it's consistent, and it's across all environments. So we really need to see how well we can help support them in this new mindset that all of us are being encouraged, I would say, to adapt to. The services and supports will focus on the nature and the quality of individuals' experiences, but really optimizing their autonomy and independence in making life choices. And if you think about what so many of the people that we work with have experienced and do still experience in terms of the kinds of options they have for living, individuals who live in group homes don't get to choose what they eat. They don't necessarily choose what time they get up in the morning. They don't necessarily choose who their roommates are. And if you think about what it would be like for you to be in that kind of situation, they don't choose what time they eat. So 5 o'clock is dinner time, and if you're not hungry, too bad, that's dinner time. Of course, we have providers who have a much broader view of folks, but very often those kinds of challenges exist on a daily basis. All programs need to be in compliance by March 2019. So there's a tremendous amount of work for us to be doing with providers, with families, and with individuals themselves. And this really crosses all of us. It crosses educators, Department of Rehabilitation, regional centers. We are all involved in helping to prepare people to take on this very new opportunity that they have. Person-centered planning will be a huge part of this, and I'm not too sure how many people are actually familiar with person-centered planning, but in the education system, you all have IEPs. In the regional center system, we have IPPs. Those documents, those systems are not necessarily person-centered. Very often there are many of us making decisions for the people who we are serving. Even in an IPP, that's often the case. So what we really are looking at in a person-centered plan is involvement of people who are involved in the individual's life. But the only people who attend a person-centered planning meeting are people that the individual has chosen themselves. So there may be a provider that's working with an individual, but the individual may not want that person at their person-centered planning meeting. And the person-centered planning meeting really is designed for hopes and dreams, whether they're the most ridiculous thing you can possibly imagine or they're actually practical. And what we've seen in the person-centered planning that we have done already at Westside with some of our individuals is that while they come up with some, we had one person who wanted to be in law enforcement, really thought he could be a police officer. Well, given the intensity of his disability, that really wasn't an option. However, he was able to do some volunteer work at the police department. So he was able to go to the police department every day. His friends were police officers. He felt very much included in that environment, and he was done. He was happy. That's where he was working, and he doesn't need to go any further. Another one wanted to be a travel agent. Well, he loves to do research, so he will work in an agency that does a lot of research on travel and where you can go and what you can do. So opportunities are opening up for folks through this planning process that really may not have been available to them in the past. So I think I've gone over most of this. It really, really is directed by the individual and the people they choose. And it encompasses the full participation of everyone in community life. And the whole idea is to try not to restrict people because of their limitations, but to really be as creative as possible to allow them to be able to be in the environments that are going to be the most meaningful to them. Having people in integrated settings, I know that at Westside we have a number of individuals with a diagnosis on the spectrum in particular, actually, who actually work for us. And I don't know what we would do without them. And just the other day, we had a huge celebration for one who was able to move into her own apartment finally. We had housewarming at the regional center for her. And it was just an amazing thing. We've worked with her for 20 years, and she now lives independently. She couldn't do that before. It was amazing. So there are funds available for programs to assist in redesigning their services. I think for all of us, it's going to be helping people come to the understanding that these services are going to be required, and there are going to be ways for them to continue to provide services to the people they're accustomed to working with, but they're going to have to do it with a bit of a different mindset. So you're not caretaking in the same way that you were before, but maybe care supporting. Self-determination. Has anybody heard about self-determination? Self-determination is a law that was actually enacted several years ago, October 2013. It allows individuals, again, to choose services and supports, who provides them, where they provide them, and it also requires person-centered planning. So the self-determination law, while already enacted, has not been approved yet in California by the federal government. And so we're still working on that. But every single regional center does have a self-determination advisory committee. And those meetings are typically open to anyone who would like to attend them. And typically this changes the way that services are actually provided to people. The regional center system has regulation about who can provide services, what their qualifications need to be, etc., how much money we can pay them. And this often really restricts people in access to some of the things they really would like for the individuals that they support or for their family members. This takes those restrictions away. There are some regulations that come from the federal government, but those restrictions are much less than the ones that we live in or live with now. It's based on the budgets that people have had for the last 12 months. And in the first 3 years, there will be a statewide participation of 2,500 people. They're limiting this so that they can really work out glitches and see what needs to be changed along the way. So each regional center is given a total number of people who can participate in the first 3 years based on their number of clients or their population. And after 3 years, anyone can join. It really does eliminate RC restriction due to regulation. Anything else?
Thank you, Sorrel.
Thank you, everybody.
So this is another hot topic that was just released in November 2016, which kind of comes on the heels of what Sorrel was talking about. And so a GAO report, what are those things? It's called the Government Accountability Office. So what's this report? It's about services needed during the transition into adulthood for youth with autism spectrum disorder. Why did they do the study? Well, because there's about 500,000 youth with autism that will be entering adulthood over the next decade. That's 500,000, right? So as they exit high school, they have to obtain these services as adults. So why did they do this study? Well, the services and supports transitioning youth with ASD need to attain their goals for adulthood. We have to figure out what that is. And what are the characteristics of these services, and how youth with autism spectrum disorder can be fully integrated into society. And I always like at this point to pause a little bit for those of you working with the little ones, or elementary age, or middle school. Transition services start there. The minute we give that little 3-year-old that individual schedule, and they learn how to transition from one place to the other as independently as possible, we know that those are called post-secondary indicators, that those are the individuals with autism that will do well in the outcomes when they become adults. So they say, what are the 5 goals autism spectrum disorder youth need? Well, they need education, yep. They need to have employment. We need to maximize independent living. I mean, isn't that the whole point? That they have a quality of life and they live as independently as possible. That they have health and safety, and that we're maximizing community integration. And I think you're hearing integration and not segregation now. It's a real movement everywhere. So when we look at those areas, they say, well, what are the 14 service categories that are going to help us get to these goals? And so you can see behavioral interventions, communication services, day programming, life skills, transition planning services, residential support, post-secondary. Raise your hand if you work just with post-secondary education, 18 to 22. Yeah, so a few of you, right? You're going, I'm on the home stretch. They're going to be 22. I have 4 years, so I hope they're coming into your programs well prepared for all those goals that they talked about. So they say, what are these services supposed to be? I like these documents because they're guidance documents. And again, your requirement is to go back and talk to your directors. So as you go in to advocate, it's not just from you. It's really based on the information. And you say, hey, look, what are these services have to be timely and individualized. They have to account for the variation of autism. First you're an individual and then you have autism. There has to be equitable access to all these services, regardless of race, gender, family income, and location. We all know the disparity and the differences based on your property tax code. Services within youth local communities in order to foster access and community involvement. I know we're involved in a transition program and the community isn't there. So we're going, well, they're ready to work, but you don't even know what we're doing. So you have to have the community involved as well. And that, again, this is wonderful, and we highlighted it in red. The GAO report says services should be evidence-based. And then they said, and by the way, there needs to be more research for that area. So how do we improve the ability of youth with autism to fully integrate into society? And I thought they did a nice job on this. They cited the need for a new approach to provide the supports and better public understanding of autism and a shared responsibility for inclusion, the society. So their example was, which I thought was really wonderful, that youth with autism should learn to workplace social expectations, obviously, and meet them to the extent they can. However, if you're going to be the Walmart greeter, and you're going to have an individual with autism, there's going to be some changes, eye contact, smiling, etc. And the employer needs to be aware of what the diagnosis of an autism spectrum disorder. It doesn't preclude that they can't do that job, but there has to be a shared understanding about what this means for performing that job. So it's a balance between us preparing well and having understanding on both parts. And I love that example that they gave. This is the other hot topic, and Kathy mentioned that in her opening address, Kathy Skeels, that the Supreme Court is considering, and on January 11th, they heard those arguments. And really, this case is being described as the most important case involving public school special education in 3 decades, in 30 years. That's a big statement. It's Stanford Law professor Jeffrey Fisher, and yes, he's representing a boy with an autism spectrum disorder from Colorado and his parents. And we know that when the Supreme Court gets involved, it becomes the law of the land. So their interpretation that may or may not be released in the spring or the summer will affect us in California. So basically the question is, what is the level of educational benefit that school districts must confer on children with disabilities to provide them with FAPE, right? Free, appropriate public education. Raise your hand if you're in meetings and you're going, well, what is FAPE for this student? Like, how much is enough, right? I mean, would you all raise your hands, please? Thank you very much. Am I wrong? I can't be wrong. So anyway, we know FAPE is guaranteed by the Individuals with Disabilities Act. And so what they're finding is the ambiguity in this is what qualifies as appropriate. Free, appropriate public education. And it was written initially to be kind of vague, but basically, you know, the 10th Circuit Court has always been interpreting it more to the side of the bare minimum in special education. So it now falls on the justices of our Supreme Court to decide whether to endorse the 10th Circuit, the next layer below them, minimal standard for educational equality for disabled students, or to articulate a higher standard. So it'll be very, very interesting, and it will have a lot of impact on how we do our work and how those IEP meetings go and the IPP how everything goes. So, hot topics in research. We have Jessica Sir-Heinrich from San Diego State University who will be presenting. And you can just click there to go forward.
So I was asked to share what is relevant for us that has come through the research pipeline and the publication pipeline over the last year. And that's a lot of information. But in thinking about narrowing this down, I wanted to focus on what would extend the reach of the work that you as the Captain Cadre are already doing. So thinking about research that could inform the way you continue to deliver evidence-based practices and train others to do so. So first I want to talk about a study that evaluated the long-term effects of parent-provided early intervention. We know early intervention is important. There's been a big focus on parent training and parent partnership in providing early intervention, but there hasn't been much investigation of the long-term effects, and so this was an important finding that came this year. So the information that we have had on parent training to support young children with autism has been focused on short-term outcomes, which means at the end of the study, what did we find? Or at the end of 3 months of follow-up, what do we find in terms of the outcomes for children? So there have been positive outcomes in terms of joint engagement, social communication, symbolic play, and social imitation. But until now, there have only been a handful, very few studies that have explored the longer-term impact, as I mentioned. So this study was published in 2016, and it was following up 5 years later on a group of parent-child dyads or partners that went through some specific training that they're calling PACT. This, as I mentioned, the data were collected 5 years following the initial training program. And in terms of the training program, it was structured as parent training sessions, so training parents to work with their own children, not just parent education, that occurred about twice a month for 6 months, and then once a month for 6 months. And then parents who participated in the study also agreed to play with their children in this structured way for about 20 to 30 minutes every day. So that's the extent of the treatment. Initial 12 sessions, 6 more sessions, and that was over the course of the year, and then parents agreeing to work with their children. Is that anywhere similar to the type of parent training that you would provide? Yes? No? In terms of the outcomes 5 years later, what was found is that there were effects for the level of autism severity in the relationship of decreased levels of autism severity for children who had participated in the parent training program. And there were also increases in the quality of child initiations toward the parents for the families who had participated in the program. There were no differences in terms of the quality and amount of parent initiations to the child between the ones who had gone through the program and the ones who had not. So I find that to be very interesting, but the quality of the child initiations toward the parent were improved. So I think this just emphasizes, again, the importance of parent training, the importance of parent partnership in providing intervention, and then also gives us a lot of interest in long-term outcomes and hope for the long-term outcomes of the services that are already happening. Do you have a question?
You repeat
Okay.
the question.
So the question is, what is meant by child initiations toward the parent? So that means when the parent is not trying to engage the child approaches or starts communication with the parent or a play action. Thank you for the question. The next study that I wanted to talk about is a systematic review. So that means the authors pulled research from several different published, peer-reviewed published studies and looked at what the research says all together to get a better picture about what is currently happening in the field regarding, in this issue, or in this particular review, peer-mediated interventions. We know that peer-mediated intervention is an evidence-based practice, and it's a tool that uses a peer to deliver intervention to a target student. The peer-mediated intervention that was focused on here was took place in group settings, primarily school or camp settings. So one of the interesting things and encouraging outcomes is that much of the research on evidence-based practices was not necessarily conducted in community programs, but each of these studies took place in community programs where children with autism were included. And so the outcomes indicated that across the 5 studies for children 3 to 17 in these school and camp settings, that there were positive increases in social ability for children with autism. So again, this is thinking about peer-mediated intervention as a way to extend the work that you're already doing by including other children in the delivery of evidence-based practices. And it can be simple. It doesn't necessarily have to be the most complex of interventions, but building the capacity and the scope of the work that can be done. Okay. And then finally, I wanted to talk about the way that research is being increased in the area of thinking about how we sustain practice over time. And this will build on what Sam Odom was talking about earlier this morning. But initially, we focused on developing evidence-based practices, developing specific interventions, and identifying which ones have the most support. So thinking about the target components of an intervention, what's prescribed or what you're supposed to be doing. Now, because we're getting a better understanding of what's not working or when sustainment doesn't happen, there's more focus on other factors that may be helping, facilitating, or prohibiting intervention happening on a long-term basis. So setting factors such as the available staffing or the organizational culture and how those relate to whether or not intervention is being done or whether an evidence-based practice is actually continuing in a community program over time, as well as some of the larger system factors. So thinking about policy and regulations or what's being required within the particular organization that you're working in. So there's a continued growth of research in these areas to explore barriers and facilitators to treatment over time. And I think this is critical for the work that we are doing here, because I'm sure most of you who have tried to train others and increase the use of evidence-based practice within your home organization have identified barriers and facilitators yourself. And if we can get a better picture of how these things happen systematically across education or developmental serving organizations, then we can approach them in a way that will really support people in a training capacity and people in a practitioner capacity too. So in terms of takeaways, I want you to think about the possibilities of increased focus on parent training, so not just providing information, but also targeted skill building for parents, and also encourage the use of peer-mediated intervention in real-world group settings as a feasible and positive intervention that can have strong outcomes. And then we also have a growing understanding of some of the organizational factors and system factors that affect evidence-based practice use.
So this is new. This is an award that you all may give to people that you coach, that you work with, that you find have been exemplary in your assistance. We know that we all like reinforcement, whether it's cash in the form of $25. But this is an example of the award. It's called the Achievement of Implementation Fidelity, and I awarded it to myself just as an exemplar. So here's how it works. The captain cadre member, you all, will notify the captain leadership. You'll send Patty and I an email. The captain leadership will send a captain implementation award back to the cadre member, who will forward the award to the individual, and you have to make sure to make a big deal out of it, right? You announce it at a staff meeting, have your principal do it, the SELPA director, make sure everybody knows. And then we will also announce through this our captain social media on platforms like on Instagram or on our Facebook page. This is the implementation nomination form. And so there is some criteria. So as you see, you would fill it out. So you'd say the captain cadre is submitting the nomination, so that's your name and what you're affiliated with, and who your award recipient is. But if you look at the bottom, the fine print, which probably shouldn't be fine print, but I was formatting it. The award recipient must have used the NPDC-ASD Fidelity Implementation Checklist for this EBP and demonstrated at least 80% fidelity with the EBP over a period of at least 3 months. That is, 80% fidelity occurred over a 3-month period of time, not just during that one single visit during the 3-month time period. Can you tell Patty Shetter, the BCBA, wrote that? I go, you write it. You're the DBA. So anyway, so there is some criteria. So we're not just giving these out willy-nilly. And so please adhere to that. And when you send it to us, we assume that you have done your work with fidelity as well, and then we'll send you that award. So we're going to spend a few minutes just looking at the captain website just really briefly. There's a lot of new stuff on here, and so we're going to go take a look at a little bit of the new stuff. Some of the stuff is hidden, and you may not have gone there right away because you usually, I can look at all where your hits are, and I see where you usually go, which is to our resources. So if you go to the About section, there's a whole new little PowerPoint about captain membership and requirements. So raise your hand if you get asked, how do I become a member of captain? It may be by your SELPA director, it may be by others. And so this is a little PowerPoint that says, here's what it means to be a part of captain, here are the requirements, because as you know, it's not about just coming here and sitting for 2 days and then leaving, and then the other 363 days, there's nothing happened, right? You guys got to do training, you got to do coaching, you got to do interagency meetings, you have to talk to your SELPA director, so there's requirements. So people who get selected have to have the ability to participate that way. So that's a place where you can see and take it to whomever if you get information asked of you. I wanted to show you the showcase that's going to happen at the end of today. If you have time at lunch, you can look at the Pecha Kucha showcases from the South. And these are all the good work that they're doing in South. I think it would be exciting for you to see that before you head into your regional meetings tomorrow, because it's going to give you some great ideas about how all these people in Southern California actually met their requirements through and showed it in a really fun way with the Pecha Kucha. And we have some really good ones from the North available to you as well. Looking at we've made a new little world here for Learn the Signs Act Early. And so it'll take you straight to the Learn the Signs Act Early because they're little and then they grow up. You're going to see more about this for those of you who go to the breakout session. but there are regional brochures now that your group can choose to do, and you can see what an example of that looks like, and it's all available to you, and the support will be available to you. Capital Captain, actually, it's going slow. There it is. So this would be something perhaps in your region you'd like to make and fill in the blanks about how families and people in your community can access the services that they need. So that's an exemplar that's new, and everybody's will be posted at some point. I'm going to go back to the website. Wanted to just quickly go through for 2 seconds some of the new resources that are on here, because we don't want you to miss any of those. Looking at the resources, you'll see the EBP charts. You'll see the chart right here that Sam showed us, the matrix and the overlay. The brand new, what are evidence-based practices for autism for 2016-17, ready for you guys to click on it. And then that one was done in Spanish. Patty, do you want to tell us how that happened? And Maribel, please stand up. I mean, she put it all in Spanish. What are evidence-based practices? I mean, how wonderful that is. And I know it must have taken you forever, so thank you. I wanted to meet you, so I just saw your name, and I go, yes, I'll put it up right now, today. So that's really awesome for all of you who need that. Here's that higher education letter if you need it, if you guys are thinking. Here's your award nomination form. We'll talk about this, but for those of you in the schools, how to provide professional development in an evidence-based, research-based way, that's going to be on here as well. We also put up boot camp. So you've all been to boot camp, and they're in there now. This is the presentation that they're doing. So Patty and I were talking, we were envisioning, oh, well, if you wanted to have your own little boot camp with your own group of people, with the people that you're coaching or whatever, you have access to that resource as well. And as you know, the classroom observation form, this is something that Sam talked about, the APERS, the Autism Program Environmental Rating Scale, so APERS, that's what that's short for, and it's a form where you go, are we doing this? Are we doing that? Are we doing this? And he gave us the self-assessment form. So that's available for you to take back and look at it and see if you want to use that to look at your own program and build upon that. We used that in the NPDC project. We did a before and developed our goals for the program that we were coaching for those 2 years, and then we looked at it at the post and did another one and said, look at all the work we did. So it's a really amazing tool, and he generously gave that to us for our use. This is the brand new goal attainment scale. And so there's just a lot of new stuff on here. So we encourage you to take the time to look at it and do that. So now we're going to move forward with our social media. Please take a look at the Instagram and our Facebook page. Raise your hand if you're using our social media, taking a look at Instagram and Facebook. Would you like us, please? We want to look really good in the world. So now we have Spark, and I'm going to let them speak to this, but we have two presenters from the UC Davis Mind Institute that are going to give you some information.
Hi, my name is Samantha Thompson, and I'm a coordinator for the Spark project at the UC Davis Mind Institute. So I'm going to talk to you briefly today about what exactly Spark is and what it means for the families that are participating. And we'll start with a video from the principal investigator of Spark to get a good idea of what exactly we are.
Hi, I'm Wendy Chung, Director of Clinical Research at the Simons Foundation Autism Research Initiative, and the principal investigator of Spark, a new autism research project. The mission of Spark is simple. We want to speed up research and our understanding of autism to help improve lives. Research has already increased our knowledge about autism, but so much more is needed to better understand the condition's causes and its potential treatments. We want to understand the full spectrum of the symptoms, skills, and challenges for those affected. We simply don't know enough about autism right now, but Spark will change that. And we want you to be part of that change. Knowledge from research can be incredibly powerful, For families, this could mean learning the cause. And the data you share with researchers will power important new research. Joining Spark can also give you access to the latest research updates to help you address daily challenges. All children and adults with a professional diagnosis of autism can participate in Spark, as well as their biological parents and siblings. There's no cost to participate. There are 4 simple steps to complete your enrollment. First, visit Spark online at sparkforautism.org to register. You'll be asked to provide your contact information, identify the individual with autism to be enrolled, and create a username and password. In the second step, participants will review a consent form. The consent form's important, and it will explain the details of the study. By signing it, you'll agree to share your data that you provide online and to be contacted for future research studies. In the third step, you'll be asked to tell us a little bit about your or your child's autism diagnosis. You'll also be asked to tell us a little bit more about other members of your family. In the fourth and final step, you'll be asked to review a second consent form. And on that form, you'll have the option of providing your genetic data. Spark will collect DNA collected from saliva. The saliva will be collected from kits shipped to your home to make it easier for families and individuals on the autism spectrum to participate. Your privacy is among our top priorities. Information submitted as part of Spark will be immediately scrubbed of each person's identity before it is shared with researchers to provide the most security possible. That's it. It's easy, it's innovative, and there's no cost to you. With everyone's help, we'll be able to obtain answers more quickly to the questions we all have. Visit sparkforautism.org to join Spark today. You hold the power in shaping the future of autism research. Spark better todays and tomorrows for all families challenged with autism.
So that video is obviously tailored to families who are interested in participating in Spark, but I think it does a really good job of introducing the project, and it also shows how easy it is for families to participate. And Spark was launched in April of 2016, and it's sponsored by the Simmons Foundation. And there are 21 clinical sites across the U.S. And these sites are there to assist in recruitment and enrollment for the project, to help with the return of genetic results, which we're hoping will happen in the middle of 2017, and also just to serve as another resource for the families that are participating in Spark. And that's our role at the Mind Institute. We're one of these clinical sites. And they're also very important to the project because we have a goal of 50,000 families participating in Spark, which is a lot of people and makes Spark one of the biggest projects of its kind. And you heard Dr. Chung describing it as a very innovative project, and Spark really does hope to shape the future of autism research because, as we know, the prevalence of autism has increased in recent years, and that's due to a variety of reasons, but nonetheless means that it's more important than ever that we really start to understand the genetic causes and develop some more specific tailored treatments for individuals with autism. And it's likely that there are hundreds of genes that could play a role in autism, which is what makes our goal of 50,000 families participating so important, because that large of a sample size means that we will gain a deeper insight into what those genetic changes look like across the spectrum of autism. Another aspect of Spark is that families who are participating have the option of being contacted about research opportunities in the future as well. So not only are we looking to be a leader in genetic research for autism, but they're also facilitating the research for other kinds of fields of research for autism in the future. So that really ties into one of their long-term goals of creating a precision medicine approach to treatments. And that means that not only will we be considering the genetic causes of autism, but also looking at environmental factors and lifestyle factors when we are creating targeted treatments and services and therapies for individuals with autism. And I am happy to report that this slide is actually very out of date now. We reached our goal of having 119 trios last week. And what that means, a trio is an individual with autism and both of their biological parents have registered, received their kits, sent them back to the lab, and then it was a sufficient sample. And we really focus on these trios because that means that we have a complete genetic picture for our research. But if one parent or if both parents are not able to participate, it doesn't in any way exclude an individual from participating in Spark. That's just what we like to focus on because it's very meaningful for our research. For year 2, which is beginning at the end of February, we have a goal of 200 trios. So it's increasing quite a bit, and that's why we are so excited to be here, because the best way for us to get the word out about Spark and reach these families that could be participating is through community service providers, community organizations, and there are a lot of ways that we can collaborate with our community partners. And this is a list of some of the ways that we've done it in the past. I'm sure there are many more, but we send out mailings, we go to community events. Sorry, this slide got a little funky. But we go to community events, we display recruitment materials throughout the community, post on social media, we post our website links in online resource directories and on organizations' websites, send out a lot of email invitations, and we've also been included in several newsletters, both in print and online. And so this is an example of what our setup looks like at community events. We go to different walks, fundraisers, vendor fairs, family resource fairs, anything like that, and we like to have a game on the table. We put out an abundance of information about the project and also just autism news because we want to be able to engage and interact with anybody that comes up to our table. And then this is what something in our mailing would look like. This is the letter that we send out that explains what Spark is, who we are, how to contact us. And then we also include more material on the project, our brochure. And one of our top priorities is always the privacy of the family. So the way this works is we do all the work, all the postage, except for the name and the address on the envelope, and that's when the community partner comes in and puts that information on and sends it out. And that's just so that we're preserving that privacy so that we don't have any of their information before they've actually consented to participating in our study, and it also preserves a relationship and the trust that community partners have built with their families. So we put in a little slip in our mailing as well that just explains that so that they know that the community partner organization that they're getting this from isn't giving their information out to people. And these are a couple examples of some of the recruitment materials that we'll put in offices, in lobbies, on clerk boards in your organization, just anywhere that these families are coming in and can see this information and learn a little bit more about Spark. And these are some examples of our posts on social media. We are really successful when we use social media because we reach such a large group of people, and it's really helpful when people that we are partnering with and organizations that we're partnering with either post about Spark or share our posts about Spark, because we're reaching a whole new community that might not know about us yet. And so we have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And then we have a video from our executive director, from our executive director. He's one of our PIs.
I'm Len Abaduto. I'm the director of UC Davis Mind Institute and one of the principal investigators on the UC Davis site of the Spark project. And so I really appreciate having this opportunity to share a little bit of information about the Spark project with you and to encourage you to encourage your families to sign up for it. The Spark project is really the largest project to date in terms of number of families that we want to enroll to do genetic studies of autism. And we know that having a really large sample of families is really critical for genetic studies, since there are so many different genetic causes of autism. None probably individually accounts for a significant number of cases, and so many will go undiscovered unless we have a lot of families participating. So our goal across all the sites is to have 50,000 families participate, and that really requires getting the word out to families. I think from the perspective of families, they'll get a lot out of participating. They'll recognize that they're contributing to the science, which will help us eventually to develop treatments that are more precise and tailored to the individual etiology of cases of autism. I think families also will have the opportunity to participate in other studies. Once they're registered in SPARK, they can get information about clinical trials or other interventions that will be sponsored by SPARK, by the Simons Foundation down the road. In addition, I think one of the really nice things that the Simons Foundation has done is they've recognized that once we get families enrolled in SPARK, they'll have opportunities to get information about other findings and other studies, and not just genetic studies, but they'll have kind of a portal for information that they'll have available to them once they're enrolled in SPARK. And then finally, I think one of the things that some families may find really important is that they may get clinically useful information as we discover more things about their family and some of the genetic causes of their child's autism. When it's clinically significant, clinically meaningful, that information will be shared with families, and that may really help them understand more about their own child.
All right, and you should have some brochures on your table about SPARK, and then we also have a table out front with more information, and we'd love to answer any questions you have about SPARK. She asked if our website is in Spanish. Unfortunately, it is not. That is a concern that has been brought up several times, but we unfortunately don't have any control over that. That's the SPARK headquarters. So we know it's an issue and something that needs to be done, and hopefully that'll get done here in year 2. But yes? So I might not be the best person to answer that question.
Can you repeat the question?
She asked,
Well, I want her to with the microphone.
yeah, she asked what qualifies as a professional diagnosis of autism and who can provide that diagnosis. So we will have more information about that at our table. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to stop by. We'd love to talk to you about how we can work together to get the word out about SPARK.
Sorry. Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you.